Welcome to the Close with One Untold Sales Stories podcast, where we talk about the history behind the deal, because it's not just the close, but it's the art of what happened behind it. So I'm interviewing CEOs and executives to figure out what are the things that led them into sales? What are the things that they tripped over and the traumas that happened that they want to share with you to help you become a better closer? Someone that after one conversation, there's trust that's built. They're going to go into the disruptor environment that they were in, the mindset and the resilience that they brought to the table. I've asked each person to list a foundation or a cause or a purpose, and I'll list that down here. So perhaps it's a QR code, a logo, a landing page. Go check that out. And if you like it, follow them and donate your time or money to this purpose. It creates a bigger lasting effect of legacy foundations. Now, it's not all about the close, but because we're in sales, it only takes one close to change everything. So grab that cup of coffee, the bowl of popcorn, and sit back and relax and learn the untold CEO sales stories in today's podcast. Welcome, everyone, to today's Close with One podcast on the untold CEO stories. Today, we have Mark Griffin, and he's going to explain how he got recognized by the Queen of England, as well as the Prince and now King of England, with a special medal of honor and recognition. Also, how he became part of a U.S. rugby team that competed against England. There's so many transformations and impact that he's had, up to 15,000 students learning the sport of rugby, going from a sports only mindset to a life transformation, seeing grades go from lower performance to top performance. And it's incredible to have Mark Griffin with us today. Welcome, Mark. It's interesting how we connected when we started off with rugby as our main connection. And you're in Erie, Colorado, and I'm in Louisville, and literally just flew into Denver. And Colorado's not your home state. However, you've already been here since what, 99?
US since 99, 20 years in New York, and then the last 6 in Colorado. Yeah.
And one of the things you shared with me is your New York story experience was something where you were able to bring rugby to 400 schools and 15,000 students. Like, what was that all about?
That's a great question. What was it all about? What it was all about was using rugby as a vehicle. And there's some really unique things about rugby that make it a really powerful vehicle for youth development. And so that was all about using rugby as this vehicle to inspire and empower young people, that were primarily for some of the really toughest neighborhoods and communities, initially across New York, then LA, then San Francisco, and use that as a vehicle that could help them realize their true potential. And so what that meant for us was using rugby for social emotional learning. So they learned things like goal setting, self-confidence, social capital, being something bigger than something themselves, social connections, academic self-efficacy, all of these things that the kids learned through what we called our values in action, which was about understanding the behaviors that we need to be successful on the field, that actually also translate off the field to the community, to the classroom, and to ultimately going to college. And so ultimately what it meant was we were able to really level the playing field for a lot of these kids, using the sport as the vehicle for that, to reframe their perspective completely on what their expectations might be for their future, see a future where they could maybe go to college and play rugby in college. And now, of course, we've been doing it for so long that a number of those kids have now graduated college, gone off into the workforce. I see some of them on LinkedIn here and there. And a number have come back to the program in New York and are coaching and managing programs and and really help him run the organization, which was amazing for me to go back at the beginning of this month, actually, for their annual gala, which is the first time I'd been to it since I was running it back in 2018. And therefore, I was there as a participant and a guest and a donor and kind of as an observer, right? Just to sort of see what it was like. And they had so many of the coaches and former students involved in the production of that event and up on the stage, and it was really awesome. So I'm really proud that they're still going strong and still impacting over 1,000, I think 1,200 kids at the moment per season.
Wow. So what was like the driver behind all this and like the key things that happened for you growing up that maybe were some struggles that you went through that kind of propelled you to do this kind of thing of creating an organization, a nonprofit, and pulling all these things together? So what are some of those big things in your past that have really kind of shaped who you are today?
Yeah, there's three pivotal moments that, like, they're not even back of mind. They're still kind of front of mind, I think, and they all kind of relate. And the first one was 10 years old, and at that point, I loved school, but I went to school just to play, right? I play with my friends, play sports, and we had to go to classes and do academic stuff as well. But it was kind of like, well, you do that, and then you get to play, and do that, and then you get to do sports. And it actually was a really tough year for me because, for whatever reason, the group of sporty kids that I wanted to sort of be part of and, feel like I belonged with them and that I was part of that group. Yeah, one of those kids was like the class clown, right? So he came up with nicknames for everybody. And
Yeah.
long story short, I had a whole school year of basically being bullied. Not physically bullied, but just name called, not allowed into the
Oh,
group kind of picking on me and all that sort of stuff. And I can remember now, and that's 40 years ago, going home, like, lots of times going home, even though I enjoyed school, I hated that dynamic. And I'd go home and I was crying and I was really upset. And so it had gone through 2 terms. I mean, you were into the summer term and there was probably only a couple of weeks left of school. And of course, my parents had given me all the different advice that parents should give. And finally, my dad had sort of had enough with it and could see how upset I was. And he just said, look, if anyone says that again, just give them a bunch of fives, which was, and I was like, really? He's like, just give them a bunch of fives. He said, like, this has gone on too long. So I had permission. This is the first and last time I've ever hit anybody, outside of maybe a couple of little skirmishes on the rugby pitch. But and so it happened, and this kid said something, and I just went, "If you say that again, I'll hit you." And he said it, and I went, "Boom!" And he went down and rolled around on the floor crying, and I ran off crying because I was upset that I just hit somebody. And that was that.
yeah.
Never a word said again. Immediately part of the group. And you fast forward 2 years, and we're in the rugby trials to who's going to get into the school team. And I can remember that as well. I remember the trials, and I literally can remember, like, the ball coming out of the scrum, and I went and tackled something, and I got up and tackled the next person, got up and tackled the next person. So I had a good kind of trial, but the coach, who is also the principal of the school, called me over afterwards. He's like, "Mark, can I have a word?" And I'm like, "Oh gosh, well, I don't think I did anything wrong. What happened?" Um, and he said, "Mark, I'd like to captain the school team." So I'm like, oh, firstly I was wondering, well, I'll get on the team, but now he's asking me to captain the team. So I looked up at him and I said, "Why?" And he said, "Because you lead from the front." And he said, "I need somebody that's going to lead from the front." I'm like, "Oh, okay." And I was kind of processing what that meant. I'm like, "Okay, yeah, thanks." So I got on the bus and I was really excited to go home, and I took the bus to, like, this corner, and I got off at this corner, and my dad used to pick me up on the way back from work, and Dad picked me up, and I got in the car, and I went, "Dad, coach asked me to captain the school rugby team." And my dad, and he was driving, and he turned to me, and he said, "Mark," he said, I'm proud of you for that, but he said, "If you're going to lead on the field, you've got to lead off the field." And what he was doing there was giving me a gentle kick up the backside, a bit of tough love, but also recognizing this belief that this coach had in me, and reinforcing that by saying, well, look, okay, great, you're going to captain the school rugby team, but can you stop being a BC student and actually pull your finger out and do some work in class as well? And those two things combined completely reframed my entire expectations for everything that came next. And I started winning academic prizes. I captained every team. I captained different teams in different sports, but captained every rugby team all the way up through school. Went to a great college, got a great job, came to the US, and that's how I ended up ultimately playing for the USA against England. However many years later, 15 years or so later. And that was the inspiration for Play Rugby USA, because when I was away with that USA team, away from work, away from the absolute craziness of training 3 mornings a week, 6 evenings a week, and having a banking job in New York City, because rugby was amateur back then. So I didn't have time to think. So I'm away with the team. I had a bit of time to think, and I remembered that moment and the sort of double whammy of the coach believing me and what my dad had said. And I'd been in New York a few years, and I could see all these kids with so much potential, but no access to sports. So I'm like, that's it. I'm going to take this game that was handed to me on a plate. I'm going to give it to them, and this is going to be what helps them lead on and off the field. And that's the essence of what Play Rugby USA represents.
So if someone were to say, oh my gosh, Rugby USA, like my kids are interested, I want this to be a big deal. Like, what is that organization that people could donate to, either time or money? And I can pop it up on the screen for people to go, let me search that out.
Yeah, thank you. And I'm not even involved anymore. I'm the founder. I'll always be the founder. It'll always be my baby. But I'm not formally working there or on the board or anything. But it's called Play Rugby USA, and playrugbyusa.org is the website, and the executive director there is a fantastic guy called Will Snape Rogers, who took over from me at the end of 2018 and has really been guiding the organisation forward through COVID, out the other side, and now through a proper growth strategy that they're executing, re-partnering with more schools and more communities, and impacting more kids in a very intentional way. So yeah, anyone that's interested in giving time, treasure, talent to Play Rugby USA, that would be very, very welcome.
And there's a backstory here that relates to the Queen of England, as well as the Prince, and now the King of England. Like, how does this all sort of come back where you got recognized to be not only the captain of the team and also play US rugby against England? Like, how did this all come together? Because it's quite an honor to
Yeah.
recognition.
I played for the USA nine different times, but the first big international match for me was against England in a long time ago, June 2003. And that picture back up there, and this, hopefully it's still in here. Yep, that's the medal that you're talking about. And that is, ooh, just dropped it. That was, so I set Play Rugby USA up, founded it in 2003, started some programming at the weekends in 2004. We started formally in schools in 2005, and I quit my banking job in 2006 because I just knew I needed to dedicate myself to it full time if it was going to grow. So fast forward essentially 10 years from when we ran our first programs in the school to 2015. That's when I received that recognition from the Queen of England, and there's this thing called the New Year's Honours List, and so they honour different people in different industries, many from the UK, but through the Foreign Office, there was recognition of the work that we had been doing, primarily in New York City, through the New York Consul General, and a number of people that, if you like, had kind of petitioned and said, hey, look, this organisation is doing some fantastic work, and he sort of ultimately approved that and put forward a nomination. And so it's called an MBE, and it stands for Member by Order of Excellence of the British Empire, which is all very old terminology, but it was a huge honor, and went to Buckingham Palace, and then Prince Charles, now King Charles, presented me with the medal at Buckingham Palace, along with the other 90 or so folks that were there being recognised that day. And that was a very special day for me, and with my parents and there to see it, and sort of all came back right to that conversation in the car with my dad, and I told him that, and of course that was quite emotional. But I think they just, in particular, it was incredibly special for them, and a really kind of in a way a bit of a nice thank you for me to say, hey, come to Buckingham Palace and let's spend a day there and celebrate this, because you guys put me on the track for this, and I surrounded myself with enough of the right people who believed in it. That is the whole reason that happened. So yeah, very special moment of recognition, that obviously we can, obviously continued the work, because recognition's nice, but it's the impact, right? That's the driver. You see the impact on the kids, you see it, how it changes their opportunities, you see the new relationships, you see that they're now part of this new community for the rest of their lives. And that's what keeps you going forward.
And speaking of going forward, how does that translate to what you're doing today? Because I want to recognize going from where you were academically, getting bullied in class, and then getting recognized for how you play and lead on the field in the front, to also getting really the message of, I want you to lead off the field as well. Like, how do you take that and transform it to organizations today? And what are the lessons you've learned for today's audience that are nuggets that can help them with, you're on a sales team, you're on a leadership team, and you're really trying to figure out, how can I personally get to A performance, and how can my entire team, my department, get to A performance too?
Yeah, the one word answer is purpose, but there's more than that. So, and the reason the one word answer is purpose is, that's been the driver for me. And so my definition, and what I do now, my company's called PurposeFused. And so our definition of purpose is that you're living intentionally at the intersection between your passions and your impact. Your passions represents, in our terminology, the things you care about, the things you believe in, the things you're good at, the things you enjoy, things that energize you. There's a lot to unpack there around passions. But ultimately, it's, what is it about you that enables you to be energized and engaged and present and focused and making a difference? And then the impact is, well, what is the meaningful difference that you want to make? And we look at that in terms of me, we, and world. So three dimensions, and I suppose technically they build up the other way. Because you've got to take care of yourself to take care of others. You need to be intentional about the impact that you want to make with other people and what that looks like. And then there's a ripple effect beyond that, from doing the right thing and supporting other people to be at their best, because most humans want to pass that on. But there's also things that sit beyond your we, the people you surround yourself with the most, that you might contribute to. Play Rugby USA would be an example for me. It's beyond my we, and it has an impact beyond that, and it has this sort of ripple effect. And so that was the bridge that took me from what I was doing to what I'm doing now. Because when I started to unpack it, as many people did in COVID, I was like, why did I set Play Rugby USA up? Like, I know I did it because I was passionate about rugby, and I was passionate about kids, and I was passionate about education, and I was passionate about entrepreneurship, and it was a way of, if you like, selfishly pulling all those things together as an experiment. Something that I believed in, that I was really confident in, even though I couldn't prove it at the time. And so that was the surface level. But what sat below that is this passion and energy for human performance and human development. Like, and right back to that point where I was 10, and the reason that was so hard for me, I've always been a caring kid, a caring person. I've been compassionate. I've been empathetic. I like to connect with people. I like to help people get better. And so when you're not, like, when you're shunned from the group, like, you literally can't do that, right? And so, but from that point on, I was always able to do that. And And that's what I do now in my work, which essentially is using purpose as the unlock. That to answer the second part of your question, from a leadership perspective, like how can you get people to perform at their best? You need to tap in to that intersection between the passions and the impact. So we're not talking about branding purpose. We're not talking about the external facing purpose that we brand our organization as. We're talking about our inside out, organic, natural purpose that we dig into. And by articulating that, what you're doing is you're enabling your people to see how it aligns to the impact they can have on the team, on clients, on business, on stakeholders, and operate at the intersection of them being at their very best, and how they uniquely are at their very best and the impact that that has. And once you unlock that, people contribute their absolute best discretionary effort. It reinforces their well-being. So then that drives their performance, and then the impact that they see they're having as a result of that keeps fueling it, and you create this cycle of like generative performance. But it starts with unlocking purpose, and there's a process to that which we can talk about. But that ultimately is the thread. Then I was using rugby as the vehicle for it, training schools, teachers, communities, parents. Now I'm using purpose as the vehicle for it and taking people through a process to unlock that in the workplace.
Wow, that's tremendous. I want to go back to something you said of surrounding yourself with the right people.
Mm.
Business partner of mine, Wayne, kind of articulates it in a way that I've adopted it as like your sunset Fab Five. So imagine yourself, end of the day, sunset is beautiful. Who are those five people that are sitting with you, looking at the sunset, and then literally looking at you and saying, I knew you could do it. I
Mm.
absolutely knew. And when I looked at it, I was like, who's my Fab Five?
Mm.
And I realized that that list needed to be just the people that absolutely were there with me. My mom, my dad, my brother, and I'm remarried, so my new wife, Cher. And then I'm inspired by the father as the one that really is kind of the leader of everything. And if I keep all of them center in my life, I feel like that purpose, the intent, and the empathy that you talk about come out when I'm serving people.
Mm.
And to me, that's the close with one. And I love how you position it as you're unlocking the self. And when you unlock the self, others around you get unlocked as well. And that purpose you talk about gets carried out in a way that it's like the magical moments that we talked about before.
Yeah, yeah. I love the concept of a Fab Five, and it got my mind spinning. And the first thing I thought about was when we're doing this sort of work to elevate performance, we do it within the context of whole self, whole life, right? Because that's the reality within which we live, right? So if we only focus on work and only focus on work goals and only focus on work objectives and only focus on work relationships, we're ignoring all the rest of our life that we have to deal with and be intentional about in order to even be able to perform at our best at work, right? And vice versa. And the reason I'm sharing that is because we have a model that we call the spheres of impact, and there's 6 spheres of impact for everybody. And below the line, the foundational ones are self and friends and family, right? And you just hit on that because you've got to take care of yourself. And a lot of very successful, high achieving people um, forget about that because they're so busy being successful and supporting everyone else and getting everything done that they don't take the time to take care of themselves until sometimes it's too late, right? So self and friends and family, because they're obviously the most meaningful relationships. And you do look at all the research, meaningful experiences and meaningful relationships, the 2 core components of happiness. So be intentional about those relationships, and that often your Fab Five is going to be there. But the other part that I thought was relevant from it is you might have a different Fab Five for different spheres of your life. right? So because what sits above the line is your work role, like literally like what you're tasked to do, your roles and responsibilities. Your workplace, which would be the broader culture, employee resource groups, so some of the bigger companies, different stakeholders, like what does that look like and how you're involved in that? Your community, which over time often changes, like my New York community is very different to my Erie, Colorado community. Community changes over time. And the last sphere is money. And you can be intentional again with your money around how that can have an impact. And therefore, your Fab Five, one way of looking at it is you could pick a person from each of the spheres, right? But you could also pick a Fab Five for work and for the workplace. You could pick a Fab Five of folks or a couple of folks you want to help you out with it in the community if the community is important to you. And certainly, you're never going to forget the people that can support you doing what you need to do for yourself, and the people you can support that can also support you in that friends and family sphere. So it's kind of a nice way of thinking about it for people that might be stuck going, who are they? Well, think of the different spheres and who might be on your, I call it a support team, but I love Fab Five.
It's relatable, and we think about social media and we think about who are all the friends that we have, who are all the followers. When you boil that down, sometimes I wear this as kind of a reminder. You could take the red or even the blue, and when you're basically at the top of the atmosphere and you're looking at outer part of Earth to space, you've got this thin blue line. What rises above that line, which is your horizon, that you're always focused on. And whenever I'm meeting someone for the first time, I realize you've got one moment during that conversation to actually connect with who they are and show who you are. And in that moment, it's not all about me. I actually hand the microphone to the other person and say, why are you here? What is your 1 year purpose? You can think of it as personal, you can think of it as business, but it is the singular purpose that you have. If I don't know what that purpose is, I don't know who I'm really working with and whether they're a good fit for me and I can serve them. But by the end of that conversation, subconsciously, they already know whether they want to work with me or not. So that's really close with one is you're not really closing, you're figuring out, can I serve this person? Can I help them?
Yeah.
And you know it works right when at the part of the conversation is they say, hey, can you help me? Will you work with me? Rather than 5,220, just following up messages, which no one wants to do. And being ghosted hurts. And you've gone through this experience of raising money, building a foundation, and now having an organization. What would you say is one of your biggest nuggets of knowledge that you would share with any of the executives watching this today, sales directors, sales reps? They're like, you know what? I can't really figure this out from reading a book or watching a course. I want to learn it from a real human.
Yeah, well, I'm going to build on what you said actually, because I think it's really pertinent and often missing. And so when you're talking about above that blue line, which is the, if you like, the North Star element of purpose, and often people think that's what purpose is. It's the North Star. It's actually, it is that, yes, that's the impact. That's where you want to go. That's what you want that to look like. But it's also the application of best self to get there, right? And so there's these two pieces. So the question I would pose to any head of sales, any sales team leader, any leader of any business is, how well do you know your people? What impact do they want to have? How would you articulate their very best and how would they articulate it? And how well do you feel they're aligned to that? My guess is that most leaders would have a surface level observation of that, but not actually know the answer. And further, actually, 90% of their people won't know the answer. Now, if you can start to unpack that with your people and truly understand the North Star elements of what do they truly care about, what difference do they want to make, and what elements of that can they bring to their work? Because nearly all impact happens through and with humans, through and with other people. So you absolutely can make an impact at work, even if your role isn't the thing that you're the most passionate about. You're still there with humans. You can still elevate everybody. An impact is all of those little actions, right? But without articulating the North Star piece and without truly understanding what it is that drives you and energizes you, you can't be intentional about it. So that is the unlock in business. And there's 3 steps you'd go through to get there, because the first one is it's about self-awareness, right? So people have to dive in and really do some self-awareness, self-reflection work, and they can do it individually, they can do it together, but that's about reframing perspective, which takes us right back to that 12-year-old conversation, right? Reframe your perspective so you're looking at everything differently. Once you're looking at everything through a lens of purpose, then you can start redefining your priorities, your life priorities, your life goals, how work fits into that, what really matters most. Focus more time and energy on that. Let some other stuff go into the rearview mirror. Be intentional, practice, get feedback, get better. Because then the last piece is that you're really embedding intentionally the practices and the behaviors that align your best self to that North Star. And it's so often missing. And regardless of function, if you can unlock that in your people, and from a sales perspective, they know that about themselves, they can then quite simply even take one piece of that, me, we, and world, as an example, and start to have those conversations that you have to understand for their clients and their stakeholders and their prospects, what do they care about? What drives them? Is it about themselves and their promotion and their career? Nothing wrong with that. Is it about them elevating opportunities for their people and we and their family, which is a we impact? Or is it bigger because they really want to have this bigger impact through their business on whatever it might be, some form of systemic challenge that that business is unlocking, and they're super passionate about that? As a salesperson, if I understand that, me, we, or world, I can then start authentically positioning my offering in a language that really resonates with them, that helps them achieve the impact they want to have. So you do it first for yourself, but then you can pass this on, and it can enable you to even perform better. And sales would be one example, I think, where that would work brilliantly.
Wow. Thank you, Mark. Thank you for sharing those tremendous insights today. So if people want to find you, can you remind us of the name of your organization?
Yeah, PurposeFused, one word. PurposeFused, F-U-S-E-D. You'll find me PurposeFused on LinkedIn, Mark Griffin, PurposeFused on LinkedIn, and the website is purposefused.com. So they're the best ways to find me. I am posting on LinkedIn 3 times a week. People can feel free to use me as like a digital coach, and then if they want to obviously go beyond that and actually have a human, real life, in person or virtual conversation, obviously that would be very much welcome. But they're the best ways to find me, and appreciate the opportunity to be here, Mark. Thank you.
You're welcome, Mark. Always a pleasure to have someone that can tie sports in real life tragedy and struggles to transformation of the self, of the we or the self, so that it can become a we and a world impact. Thank you for sharing that with us today.
You're very welcome. It's great to be here.